About a decade ago, Tom Herman and Greg Ward Jr. were setting the college football world on fire as the little group of 5 Houston Cougars were beating top 5 opponents and were one of the most exciting teams in the nation. Houston football had had a really good decade to that point, but then they ended up messing up the hire with Holgorsen. Houston had a bit of a fall off, but they were rejuvenated when it was announced that Houston would be going to the Big 12. This was huge for their brand, huge for the program as a whole, but the only issue was expectations were going to be higher. They were now going to be playing against Big 12 teams instead of American schools, and to start out last season, it looked like they were in over their head. First-year head coach Willie Fritz was struggling, but in the last calendar year, Houston has gone from a team that was last in the Big 12 to now being a college football playoff contender. The Cougars are currently 7-1, have completely rebuilt the roster, and are in contention for a college football playoff spot. In today's video, I want to talk about how Willie Fritz rebuilt Houston football in just a year and a half, how the Cougars have been so good this year, and what we could expect from them the rest of the season. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about Houston football. I'm not sure if Houston athletics as a whole has been in a better spot than they're in right now. The football team is currently ranked with a chance at the playoff, and the basketball program is now considered a blue blood in the modern era of hoops. Things have just gone super well for Houston, and they really got going in the late 2000s. Under head coaches like Kevin Sumlin and Art Briles, Houston won 10 games multiple times, had some really good quarterbacks, and had their moments where they were even ranked. They eventually moved to the American Conference in 2013 and were there for 2 seasons under head coach Tony Levine before Tom Herman took the head coaching job in 2015. Herman was one of the new and up-and-coming coaches in college football, as he had been the offensive coordinator for Ohio State and had helped the Buckeyes win a national championship. He had now taken over as the head man for the Cougars, and in his first season in 2015, Houston was insane. I mean, they were actually good that year. Led by Greg Ward at quarterback and DeMarcus Ayers at receiver, they had an incredible offense, and Houston beat teams like Louisville, number 21 Memphis, number 15 Navy, and number 22 Temple. They also knocked off number 9 Florida State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and in total, Houston went 13-1 with a 7-1 mark in the conference, with their only loss coming to UConn. Houston had a ton of hype going into the 2016 season, and they would face off with number 3 Oklahoma in Week 1. Not only did Houston compete in this game, but they actually won. They beat the number 3 ranked Sooners 33-23, and this started an incredible season for them. Unfortunately, they had 2 bad losses to Navy and SMU, but in the second to last week of the season, they also beat a second top 5 team as they knocked off Lamar Jackson and number 5 Louisville. The Cougars had 2 top 5 wins in 2016, but unfortunately just had some dumb losses as they eventually got blown out in the Las Vegas Bowl by San Diego State. Houston would end up going 9-4 in 2016, and then Tom Herman would take the Texas job. We all know he didn't work out there, and then Houston decided to move forward with Major Applewhite. This was somewhat of a controversial hire at the time, as he was at Texas before and then was the offensive coordinator at Houston before he took over as the head man for 2 seasons. Unfortunately, Applewhite was just not able to see the same amount of success, as he went 7-5 in 2017 and 8-5 in 2018. The most notable player from that time period was quarterback D'Eriq King, who was an insane athlete who helped bail them out a lot. Despite falling off a bit though, Houston was still a very respectable program, so when that head coaching job opened up, they were going to get some good candidates. The next era of Houston football was led by coach Holgorsen. He had done a good job while he was the head coach at West Virginia, but had sort of leveled out. Houston thought he would be a good hire, and in his first season in 2019, the team would go 4-8. It wasn't pretty. In 2020, it wasn't much better as they went 3-5, but for some reason qualified to make a bowl game. 2021 though, things would finally come together for Houston, as led by guys like quarterback Clayton Tune and Tank Dell at receiver, Houston would end up going 12-2 with a win in the Birmingham Bowl over the Auburn Tigers. They also finished ranked 17 and would go 8-0 in the American Conference. Tune would once again return in 2022 alongside Tank Dell and their big-time freshman Matthew Golden, but it was a major letdown considering the hype, as the team would end up going 8-5 with a 5-3 mark in the conference. But off the field, huge news would be coming to the program. On July 1st of 2023, Houston was officially a Power 5 school, as a couple of years earlier, Big 12 presidents voted to expand the league by 4 teams. Houston was one of those schools, and because of their football success and their basketball success, they were a prime candidate for Power 4 expansion, and they got the bid. This was a historic and proud moment for the university, but now there'd be new expectations. Being mediocre wouldn't cut it, and especially with the success the basketball team was having, Dana Holgorsen would need to have a good first year in 2023. Unfortunately, that is not at all what would happen. As led by new quarterback Donovan Smith, the team struggled. Houston would end up going 4-8 in 2023 and 2-7 in the Big 12. They finished at the bottom of the conference, and after the season was over, they would decide to fire Dana Holgorsen. Their AD said, quote, "Over the course of his 5 seasons with the Cougars, Dana made strides in our football program in many ways and laid the groundwork for our transition to the Big 12. Ultimately, the results on the field fell below our standards of excellence, and we are grateful to Dana for his efforts and commitment and wish him the very best." Houston had a couple of bright spots, including that 2021 season, but other than that, he never really lived up to the hype and was sort of underwhelming. He went 31-28 in 5 seasons, and now they'd have to find a new head coach who could not only rebuild Houston, but make them even better. They would need a coach who understood how to build a program and could compete in the modern NIL world. Now let me introduce you to Willie Fritz. On December 3rd of 2023, Houston found their guy in Tulane head coach Willie Fritz. He led the Green Wave to one of their best stretches in school history as he reached a bowl game in 5 of his 6 years, and they went 23-4 in the 2 seasons prior. Before that, Tulane was a pretty abysmal program, and Houston's AD said, quote, "No one in the country has been better at leading and developing student athletes than Willie Fritz. Over his more than 3 decades of head coaching experience, he has guided several football programs to historic success." This was honestly going to be a pretty big rebuild, as no matter how good people thought Willie Fritz was, it was going to be hard to make Houston a competitive team, especially in the Big 12 now. But he would end up doing it, despite the first year being challenging for him. Last season, Houston brought back one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12 in Donovan Smith, as one site had him as a projected first-round pick. Unfortunately, the quarterback position would be absolutely terrible for them, as neither Donovan Smith or Zion Chris could get anything going, and neither of them even had over 1,000 yards, and both had more interceptions than touchdowns. The offense just couldn't get much going in general, and they lost their first 2 games to UNLV and Oklahoma. Fritz would get his first win against Rice, before then back-to-back shutouts against Cincinnati and Iowa State. Through the first month of his tenure, it looked like he was in over his head. But Fritz would rally a bit, and they won 3 of their last 4 games over TCU and number 17 Kansas State. They then lost to Arizona, Baylor, and BYU to end the year, but they were more competitive now. In total, Fritz went 4-8 with a 3-6 mark in the conference, and they would definitely have to do some work in the portal if they wanted to have a more competitive roster. The first thing Fritz did was go out and get a good quarterback. Connor Weigman was at one point a 5-star recruit, and after 3 seasons at Texas A&M, he was underwhelming. He decided to transfer to Houston for 2025 and has definitely saved his career. He then went out and got Tanner Koziel, one of the best tight ends in all of college football, who last year at Ball State had 94 catches and 8 touchdowns. He's also 6'7", and the addition of UAB wide receiver Amari Thomas also proved to be pivotal. As I said, the rushing game in 2024 was also terrible, and getting Rice transfer Dean Connors would make them more competitive there. Fritz did well in the transfer portal, and combining that with a favorable schedule, they had a chance at being a breakout team, except nobody really bought it. To start out the season, Houston would beat Stephen F. Austin 27-0. It was a good momentum win for them, and in week 2 they would destroy Rice 35-9. These 2 games weren't that big of an indicator, but it looked like they were more fundamentally strong than last season. In week 3, they would face off with Colorado, and after the game remained close, they ended up winning the game late, 36-20, and now Houston was 3-0. Okay, people were starting to take note, but then it looked like it was all a fluke. After being down bad against Oregon State on the road, they would make a ferocious comeback and beat the Beavers 27-24 in overtime. Houston fans were just happy to escape Corvallis with a win, as the Beavers are one of the worst teams in college football, and now Houston was 4-0. They still weren't getting much respect though. In week 5, they were humbled a bit as they faced off with number 11 Texas Tech at home, and the game was not particularly close. They ended up losing 35-11, but to be fair, Weigman was hurt for part of that game, and it was just sort of a disaster for them. This would be a pivotal moment in their season though, as they'd either respond or they would fall apart. Luckily, they had 2 bad Big 12 teams ahead of them, as they would then go on the road and play against Oklahoma State, winning that game 39-17. Alright, they were 5-1. Following that, they'd come back home and play against Arizona, and they'd win that game 31-28 in a really close one. Okay, now Houston was bowl eligible by mid-October, and they were starting to be seen as a legit contender. but in order to be in that tier, they would need to beat someone legit. That finally happened this past weekend, as traveling on the road to number 24 Arizona State, one of the hottest teams in college football, Houston would go on the road and upset them 24-16. Now they were 7-1 and 4-1 in the Big 12, and now you have to consider them a contender. We are now 3/4 of the way through the season, and they only have one loss and are in the thick of the Big 12 conference race right now. They also have a manageable schedule their last 4 games. This weekend they'll play against West Virginia, who is currently at the bottom of the conference, and after that you'll face off with UCF, who is also at the bottom of the conference. While I do worry about that as a potential upset game, to finish the year you have TCU, who currently isn't ranked, and then you have to travel on the road to Baylor, who can't seem to figure things out. One week the Bears are really good, the next week they're confusing. Honestly, if I had to put money on it, I would say they win 3 of these last 4, as I think they lose on the road to Baylor in that final game, but they should beat West Virginia, UCF, and TCU. In that case, the Cougars would be 10-2, with 2 losses in the Big 12. Depending on tiebreakers, it would definitely depend on tiebreakers at that point to see if they get to the Big 12 championship, but regardless, it'd be a super successful season for Houston. Currently, the Cougars are ranked number 22 in the nation, and this is the first time they have been ranked in years. Willie Fritz has pulled off one of the better turnarounds in all of college football, and it's led by Connor Weigman. He has 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns, and he also has 400 yards and 8 scores on the ground. He's been super dynamic, and Dean Connors has led the way with nearly 600 yards on the ground, and then their two-headed monster at receiver in Amari Thomas and Tanner Koziel have combined for over 70 touchdowns, about 1,000 yards, and 8 scores. Houston has also had a pretty good defense this year, and overall, they're just playing like a good, well-coached football team. I don't think they're the most talented or the best team in the world, but they're 7-1 and are competing for a college football playoff spot right now, so who can really argue much against them? We'll have to see how the last month of college football plays out, but for now, Houston's in a great spot. Willie Fritz has done a tremendous job, and at a school in an area like Houston, the sky could be the limit for the Cougars, and Willie Fritz may just be getting started. But what do you guys think? If you're a Houston fan, how good do you think you guys are? How do you think you'll finish the season? And what other teams should I spotlight next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you didn't support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.